Welcome to this NPTEL course on Introduction to Exercise Physiology and Sports Performance. To this module on endocrine system and exercise. This will be the last and final session of this module. I am Dr. Chandrasekhar Guru. I am a sports medicine physician with the Armed Forces Medical Services. So we are learning about the endocrine glands of the body, the basic concepts, namely the functions, mechanism of action, classification of hormones, the hormone response to exercise, and the hormones function in regulating the exercise metabolism have been discussed in part 1 and part 2. In this final part 3, we will discuss certain case scenarios and with respect to the hormone and their function in exercise and sports. Let us revise the concepts that we have gone through in the previous two parts. So we saw about the various endocrine glands, the basic concepts, the different classification of hormones based on the chemical structure, the mechanism of action of these hormones, how the hormone receptor complex functions, and we also discussed about the various endocrine glands and the hormones that are produced, their target organs as well as the major functions. In part 2 of this module, we discussed about the effect of or the response of these hormones to exercise as well as the importance in carrying forward the knowledge in your practical day-to-day application in exercise training. So we discussed about growth hormone and its importance in exercise, how it varies with respect to exercise, and how the knowledge can be utilized to promote anabolic effect of growth hormone, induce the skeletal and non-skeletal effects. We studied about catecholamines, which is secreted from the adrenal medulla, the relation with sympathetic nervous system, how they respond, what is their role and function during exercise, and we discussed about the hormones produced from the adrenal cortex, namely the mineralocorticoids and the glucocorticoids and the androgens. We discussed the importance of the electrolyte and water balance that is regulated by the aldosterone during exercise, the effect of cortisol, namely the stress hormone, and how it varies with diurnal variation and its importance and various functions, and what are the factors that regulate the production of cortisol during exercise, what are the various functions of androgens, the testosterone, estrogen and progesterone, as well as the dihydroepiandrosterone produced in the adrenal cortex, and what is their role in terms of promoting muscle growth and increasing performance during exercise. We also discussed in detail about the hormones of the pancreas, namely the insulin and glucagon. Insulin tries to increase or decrease the blood glucose level, and glucagon as an antagonistic effect to increase the blood glucose level, causing catabolism. So the opposing effects have been discussed in part 2 of this module. We also discussed about the functions of insulin and what are the various effects that it has on various tissues, the liver, muscle, as well as the adipose tissues. We also discussed few case scenarios with respect to the application of the information on endocrine and hormones in your day-to-day exercise training and framing of exercise regimens. So with this background, in this session we will discuss various case scenarios and will try to apply the knowledge that we have gained in the previous two parts of this module. So, case 1 is Arun, who is a marathon runner. With respect to growth hormone response to endurance training, what must be the intensity at which Arun must train for a favorable growth hormone release? So, you know about growth hormone, how it is released, what is its function. So, what is the type of exercise training that you need to incorporate in this endurance training as a marathon runner in order to have a favorable growth hormone release? So, from the scenario, we know that it is an endurance activity. So, various studies have shown that specifically in endurance activity with constant load, the growth hormone levels tend not to increase whenever and it almost stays parallel to the levels of blood lactate and catecholamines. So, conversely, you can assume that when you increase the level of blood lactate by means of training or by increasing the catecholamine levels in the blood, there has been increase in the levels of growth hormone as well. So, this information can be incorporated in your practice. So, how do you increase the blood lactate level in the blood? It is by training at lactate threshold or beyond lactate threshold. So, this would help the individual aid in increasing the blood lactate concentration, and training at such intensities is also found to increase the level of growth hormone levels. In addition, if you also train at maximum intensity, you are also triggering the anaerobic bioenergetic pathway. So, that release results in increase in the catecholamine release, which again also favors increase in the growth hormone levels post activity. So, this information is important for you to understand and incorporate this in your day to day training. So, in this case, Harun has to incorporate lactate threshold training as well as maximum intensity training in his training sessions or periodization in order to have better growth hormone response. Let us move on to a second case. So, here's Vishwa, who has joined your gym and has been doing resistance training since last 2 months. He is regular and has gained good muscle strength as well as size. So, what hormone effects would have contributed to this progress in strength? I am sure you would have incorporated this, concepts in your practice, and hence you would have seen good muscle strength and size. So, what are the hormone effects which would have contributed to this progress? I'll give you a moment of time to think over. To continue, so when you start resistance training initially, it stimulates the hormonal change, and because of the hormonal change, there is increase in or better neuromuscular response to the training, and this results in increased muscle strength. However, with ongoing training with progressive overload principle, this is increased in the testosterone as well as growth hormone. So, we know testosterone favors muscle growth. Growth hormone also has anabolic effect on the skeletal and non-skeletal tissues. So, because of which there is an increase in the muscle force production as well as increase in the size of the muscles by means of hypertrophy. So, this is the reason why you have increase in the muscle strength as well as size in this case. Heavy resistance training uh, incorporated with even one session has been found to increase the testosterone levels. So, it is important that you incorporate at least 1 or 2 sessions in a week with heavy resistance training in the weekly program, so that you trigger the secretion of testosterone and growth hormone. More or less, maximum intensity also increases the catecholamines, and together these reason increase in the force production of the muscle. So that's about that part of it. In the same individual, what type of resistance training in terms of the FIT principle? FIT is nothing but frequency, intensity, type and timing principle, which is required to achieve the favorable hormonal milieu. So it is shown that in resistance training, when you incorporate resistance training of large muscle group, namely the gluteus, the quadriceps, by means of doing a deadlift or a power clean or a squats. So large muscle groups are involved, and your resistance should be maximum beyond 85% of one repetition maximum. And the third important aspect is when the volume of exercise is moderate to high. What I mean in this is that you need to have multiple sets of such heavy resistance training. However, you give a good adequate interval between the sets, but not between the repetitions. So such kind of resistance training, incorporating such principles of FIT principle in your resistance training, is found to increase the um, hormonal milieu, which favors muscle size as well as growth. Let's move on to another case, case 3. She's Miss Kavya. She's 24 years old, female. She's a trained half marathon runner, and she's trained over last 10 weeks for this half marathon. A study was done as a research in which they estimated a plasma insulin level and glucagon values during the marathon, and it was found that it was at par with their pre-exercise resting level. So with whatever knowledge you had, what could be the reason for relatively low levels despite an exercise state? So we have studied that, we have discussed that most of the hormones as the exercise progress tend to increase. However, in this case, you have seen that the measured plasma insulin and glucagon are almost similar to the resting state. So what is the reason for this individual who was trained for an half marathon? Let's see what's the reason. So with exercise training, there is increased insulin sensitivity, which we have discussed previously, and this increased insulin sensitivity is there in both muscle as well as in the liver, and this causes a better hormone receptor affinity, which results in better desired action at a very low concentration itself. So basically, because of increased insulin sensitivity, the low level of insulin itself is able to trigger the receptor, form a strong and increased affinity hormone receptor complex, which delivers the desired action, which would have been done by more level of hormone which is available in the blood. So that is an important adaptation that happens with endurance training for a period of time. Secondly, the endurance training per se, you also have better fat mobilization because of the adaptation that happens in the hormones, catabolic hormones. So they mobilize the fat and they result in catabolism of the fat, that is lipolysis, which results in alternate source of energy fuel for the endurance training. So thereby the need for insulin is low to maintain the blood glucose level, because here for a prolonged period of time during the submaximal state, it is the fat which gives 50% of the energy source as fuel. Also, because of uh, the during exercise, as such, exercise causes increase in the release of catecholamines, which again inhibits the action of insulin or secretion of insulin. So these are the probable reason why the level of insulin was almost equivalent to the resting state level in this particular individual who has undergone exercise training over a period of time for a long distance run. Moving ahead with another case, it's quite of an interesting case. See, she's Vidya and she is a regular cyclist. She goes for long cycling, events, and she says that even missing one day is not there in her schedule. So why she says so? She says so because uh, she says cycling calms her mind and gives her better clarity, reduces the confusion. She says that at the end of the session, when she completes, she feels a good high or kick after the cycling session. So that's why she doesn't want to miss the session. She wants to continuously take part in a cycling session. And it also supposed to relieve her stress. That is one of the main reason that she again performs cycling without even missing a day. So with all these inputs, what do you think the hormone that is involved? Yes, there is specific group of hormones which is kind of endogenous opioid peptides. They resemble the action of opioid, um, and these are called as endorphins. They are produced by the body, and they increase about 5 times when you do a physical activity or exercise from the resting level. And these endorphins are found to increase the pain tolerance. You can tolerate more pain. It means the appetite control is better controlled, and it also reduces the anxiety level, stress level, anger, and also confusion. Further, it is found to increase in a moderate level of intense aerobic activity. In when you do a resistant training for a longer duration with a light resistance, I mean to say the resistance that you will have will be around 40 to 60 percentage of weight resistance and performed over a longer duration with long rest intervals. So this almost turned out to be a circuit training kind of a thing, which almost triggers an aerobic metabolism as well. And such kind of activity is found to increase the release of endorphins. And endorphins, because of their effect on the central nervous system, the calming effect they have on your mind, you will find trained athletes, elite athletes, frequently involving in the activity for the sheer high that they gain from that activity per se. So that is even called for runners as runners high. So that is what is the effect of endorphin. So Vidya in this case is also experiencing these kind of good emotional as well as mood related outcomes because of the release of endorphins. And this is one of the reason why it is also attributed to the positive outcomes in mental health with the effect of exercise. Let's discuss about uh, something about the metabolism of glucose. Here we have Hankur. He goes for a 5 kilometer run. Uh, what do you think the how the glucose metabolism is regulated? So in this case, at rest, glucagon is which is present in the body by its action of catabolic activity, it causes glycogenolysis, because of which you have increase in the blood glucose level. When you start doing the exercise, there is increase in the secretion of glucagon. So you need glucose for your continuous nutritional supply, energy supply. So glucagon along with catecholamines. Catecholamines, as we know, they are the first set of hormones to be released because of the sympathetic stimulation. So catecholamines and glucagon again act on the liver as well as the muscle and they initiate the process of glycogenolysis and start glycolysis, thereby yielding the uh, increasing the blood glucose. Now, as the exercise activity progresses, when the individual reaches about half an hour into the activity, there is increase in the secretion of cortisol. So, we know that cortisol as a permissive action, wherein it uh, exaggerates the action of glucagon and catecholamines. So, they are already available in the blood. With the release of cortisol, the action is further compounded, which further result in a catabolic effect, where the alternate source of fuel, that is protein, is catabolized. So, protein is broken and that results in undergoes gluconeogenesis to get into the glucose pathway to form increased carbohydrate as a source. Subsequently, the growth hormone, which is again secreted at 30 to 45 minutes of the activity, further increases the mobilization of free fatty acids with this anti-insulin effect, which we have seen. So, as a direct action, growth hormone acts on the adipose tissue to increase the free fatty acids, and thereby it spares the carbohydrates. So, because of which there is increased availability of carbohydrate for the immediate reserve is made through. Subsequently, with the intensity increasing, there is increased release of catecholamines. So, we have discussed that as the intensity increases towards the maximum, there is increase in the catecholamines which are released, which results in increased utilization of muscle glycogen to give anaerobic energy. It also acts on the liver to increase the glucose level and thereafter increases the blood glucose. This glucose which is formed in the liver is released onto the blood, and this is used by the muscle. Uptake is done by the muscle to replenish the utilize the glycogen store in the muscle. Subsequently, as the glucose level in the liver comes down, it also increases, this further triggers further secretion of glucagon and cortisol, which increases gluconeogenesis through the other sources like fat as well as through the protein. So, thus as the intensity and the duration progresses, the hormones have catabolic effect by kind of using the glycogen stores first from the liver and the muscle and continuously replenishing them. Meanwhile, when the stores get depleted, carbohydrate stores get depleted, the hormones, namely the cortisol and the glucagon, acts at the lipid store as well as at the proteins, and they are broken down to give get converted into the blood glucose, and which again is utilized by the muscle to provide the necessary energy. So, that is how various hormones during the process of the exercise uh, contribute to maintain the carbohydrate level to give constant energy to the activity. Let us discuss the last case in this session, that is we have with us Mr. Rahul, who is an ultra distance runner. When he runs for long duration, he utilizes fat as a major source of fuel in the submaximal range. So, with whatever knowledge you have gained, what do you think is the influence of endocrine hormones on the fat catabolism sparing the carbohydrates? So, during the long duration run in the endurance activity, you have free fatty acids as the main source of energy, and these are broken down from the stored fat by the action of hormone called lipase, and most of the hormones act at this level to increase the rate of lipolysis. So, thus the rate of lipolysis is stimulated by decrease in the level of insulin. Why? Because insulin is an anabolic hormone. So, insulin level, if it is low, it favors catabolism. Second thing is the availability of increased level of catecholamines. So catecholamines are the immediate hormones which are released after an exercise activity, and they subsequently increase as the exercise progresses. So catecholamines are essential to cause lipolysis. Thereafter comes your cortisol and growth hormone as the exercise progress beyond 45 minutes to 1 hour. So during that time you have the effect of cortisol and growth hormone contributing to the fat metabolism and yielding energy to the activity. So from the discussion of this module on endocrine system and exercise, the key takeaways that you need to consider is that endocrine along with the nervous system, collectively called as the neuroendocrine system, is the main communication system. Both the nervous system and the endocrine system acts as a communication as well as an integration system between the internal inputs as well as from the external stimulus. The other aspect is that though there are multiple endocrine glands, there is one true master gland, that is the hypothalamus. So hypothalamus is the one which integrates this nervous system, what you want to kind of do, the voluntary requirement, the learning and memory aspect of it, the emotion and the mood aspect of it, they are all integrated with the endocrine system. So this happens because of the hypothalamus. So at the hypothalamus, the integration of these two different systems happens, and thereafter a common pathway happens because of the various release of hormones, and it also controls the feedback mechanism and regulation of these aspects as well. And the feedback mechanism is closely it's a very closely knit system, wherein each and every minor change in the levels of either the neural response or the humoral response, that is level of blood molecules in the blood, or the hormonal response, by either of these three mechanisms the feedback is closely titrated. So thereby you have a very specific effect through the target organ. So the hormone, even though it is secreted in the blood at a very distant or a remote place, it still finds its way to the target site. That's mainly because of the availability of certain specific receptor in the target sites, and because of their interaction, not only the hormone level, the availability of the number of receptors as well as the interaction that happens between the hormone and the receptor, like a lock and key mechanism, that triggers a system of chemical reactions or activities within the cell, which results in the desired effect. The desired effect may be to increase certain proteins, or it modulates certain enzyme activity, or by influencing the secretory function of the cell. So these are various ways by which the hormone functions to execute the required desired action. More importantly, as a practitioner, what you need to incorporate in your day-to-day exercise training and prescription protocol is that the availability of right nutrition as well as the exercise training principles, namely the periodization, the fit principle with the variety of training, progressive overload, all these principles in with a background of adequate right nutrition can provide a good environment for right hormonal milieu. So what I mean by right hormonal milieu is that a favorable condition for anabolic effect to take place and catabolism to be at the minimum. So because of which you can promote a better muscle growth and response to the exercise using the endocrine system. So I think these are the main takeaways of this module. Those of you who are interested in further going and reading in depth, you are directed to the standard textbooks of exercise physiology and strength training and conditioning by NSCA. Thank you.